Hello and welcome to episode 440 of Retro Encounter, the RPG fan weekly podcast of many topics. I'm Mike Sollosi. And listeners, if you heard our episode last week, you probably figured out what we're talking about tonight. It is part 2 of Kingdom Hearts 2, where we get into the end game and maybe some finer details of this 2005/2006 beloved classic. But before we get into that discussion, let's hear who's going to be involved in that discussion, starting with Peter Triezenberg.
Yeah, hello.
And Zach Wilkerson.
Hello.
And Aleks Franiczek.
Hello.
So,
it's Sephiroth! This is it.
I'll get him. They'll pay for this. That's still my favorite one.
You know what? As funny as that scene is, though, you have to admit that the music goes kind of hard.
No, it does, and
music always goes hard in this game.
Shimomura is like on fire in this game.
I hate to make to be a less cynical voice than I would expect for a Kingdom Hearts game, but I really did have fun with Kingdom Hearts 2. This was my first time playing the game, outside of the first 30 or so minutes that I tried probably 20 years ago, like 15 years ago. But I approached it with some reluctance just because I do have a bit of an eye roll attitude towards the story and lore of Kingdom Hearts the past, again, 20 plus years. But I really did have fun with this one. In fact, if anything, I finished it like really soon after that first recording that we did. So I haven't touched the game in close to a week. And there's a real danger that I'm going to struggle to remember all the Organization 13 names.
That's okay. That's what I'm here for.
Perfect.
I played all of them and I can't remember.
Also perfect. But
which organization? Which organization? There's 2 of them. Just kidding.
Oh yeah, no, aren't there? But is
there's
there like
human names and there's also organization names?
And isn't there like a second Organization 13? I made the mistake of trying to check. I made the mistake of trying to check a wiki to figure out who was who, and I ended up with more questions than I had coming out than going in.
Welcome to Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah,
yep,
right.
That's normal. That's normal. We have snacks in the back, and complimentary beverages.
And I will have some questions that seem extremely naive for someone playing this game in 2024. But I appreciate your patience and grace in dealing with my dumbassery. But the moral of the story is, I thought this game was quite good. It is closer to that. Well, how do I put this? I mean, what I wanted Kingdom Hearts 1 to be doesn't really exist, I think. But this was Kingdom Hearts 2 is a more earnest attempt at representing these Disney worlds well, and does a better job of creating its own lore and respecting the characters of Sora, Riku, and Kairi than Kingdom Hearts 1 did. I can't believe I'm saying those words out loud. But so yeah, I honestly surprised myself at how much I enjoyed this. But the end game really is just a gauntlet of boss fights that are, I will say, have their ups and downs. We don't need to go into all of those specifically, but where we left off, we saw a bunch of events at Hollow Bastion. We learned a little bit more about Organization 13 and Xehanort and what a nobody is and what they're trying to do. I think this is me speculating a little bit. I think they aggressively went after Sora because they saw like Kairi's light and possibly the light of the mysterious force of Kingdom Hearts like restore Sora's heart to his body. So in an effort to replicate that and get their own hearts back, they're trying to create their own Kingdom Hearts, which is sort of a land, a door to infinite heart and different infinite light. I can't believe I'm saying these damn words out loud. And so they decide to gently nudge Sora, Donald, and Goofy to destroying as many Heartless as possible, because every time a Heartless is destroyed, they're something of their remaining heart, or at least what used to be their heart, sort of is siphoned off to Kingdom Hearts. So, but basically by Sora, Donald, and Goofy going around and righting wrongs like we expect them to, they're sort of playing into Organization 13's plans. But there's a breakaway faction of Organization 13 that's mostly just Axel, who is trying to separate Sora's heart again, because Sora's Heartless, Roxas, is a dear friend of Axel's. And
is nobody, but yes, you got the gist of it.
You're
down.
right. Sorry, so, Roxas is Sora's nobody, and he wants so Axel is kind of a breakaway rebel from Organization 13. Organization 13 wants Sora to defeat as many Heartless as possible, so they can maybe make their own Kingdom Hearts and restore their hearts. But Sora, Donald, and Goofy aren't interested in that because the nobodies cause so much suffering. They need to be defeated. Then there's Ansem the Wise, who puts on the mask and goes by Diz. He's sort of collaborating with Mickey. Mickey's collaborating with Riku, but Riku doesn't want to be seen by Sora because the darkness that he was in for several years transformed him. It's all so messy, and I really only understood parts of it while it was happening. But Peter, I want you to try to transport yourself back to the mid 2000s and try to remember, I know this is a very important game to you, but when you were experiencing this story for the first time, how did it make you feel? And revisiting it in 2024, do you still feel that way, or are you sort of have a more revised reaction?
I definitely have a little bit of hindsight bias, that's for sure, just because, especially playing it recently with the benefit of knowing what comes in the sequels, what some of the mysteries they were teasing would sort of eventually pan out with. I'd probably say that my interest is still enthusiastic, but also somewhat tempered. Whereas back in the day, when I was really into this and I was eating up Kingdom Hearts' cryptic nonsense, and I was very interested in all the mysteries that were getting teased as the series goes on. Like, oh, who's that mysterious hooded figure? Oh, what's the deal with Xemnas, and what is he trying to accomplish? When the final mix version came out, and our only way of experiencing it in the West was very low quality videos on the internet, being like, what's going on? Why is he talking to a suit of armor? What is that? That kind of thing was probably a whole lot more engaged to me back then than it is now. Now I kind of look at it and go, oh, okay, I see how the dots connect in this story, and it's all a little played out and silly just because I have that hindsight bias. But when I was young and impressionable, it definitely seemed a lot more exciting to me.
Now, Peter, I might be revisiting this question multiple times. I know that events of this game reference other games in the series because I was playing the final mix version, which is basically every version in English other than the original PS2 release. I know that the events of 358 over 2 days and Birth by Sleep are sometimes referenced.
Yes, they are, and most of those
but most of those references are new to Final Mix and weren't in the original.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So a lot of that stuff. There is a secret ending you get if you complete the game on the highest difficulty and collect all of the Ansem reports, I believe. There's a couple other requirements. And that shows 3 armored Keyblade wielders. That was in the vanilla game, but in Final Mix they expanded on that. There's an extended version of that trailer. There's new cutscenes added that directly reference Birth by Sleep events from Birth by Sleep. There's a scene where Xemnas is seen going down a staircase and sitting down and talking to an abandoned suit of armor as though it's someone he knows. We now know that that's that's the armor of one of the characters from Birth by Sleep, Aqua. So yeah, things like that were added after the fact to sort of tease out what was to come in future games. But we didn't know.
Now, when I was playing this game, my girlfriend was watching me for large portions of it, and she's a Kingdom Hearts fan. And multiple times while we were playing it, or while I was playing it and she was watching, I asked her a question, and she would say, "Oh, that's a 358 over 2 days thing," because my understanding is that game is about Roxas, in the sort of and what happens in the couple of years between Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. And it sort of ends with Roxas being captured and put into the simulation at the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 2. And Axel and Riku are both major characters in the game as well. And that's an oversimplification, but Final Mix added enough references to 358 over 2 days that I was, as a total newcomer, I was a little bit confused. and at least one of the new boss fights added for the Final Mix version is maybe my favorite boss fight in the game. But we'll talk about that soon.
I think I might know which one you're talking about, but yeah, that's the gist of it. As an aside, I do think it was funny back in the day. This is again going back to young Peter playing this game and not knowing what the heck a Birth by Sleep was. And some of my friends, were a bunch of silly middle school kids thinking, oh, is this going to be a trailer for 3? And then my friend was totally convinced that the 3 Keyblade wielders in that trailer were actually like adult Sora, Riku, Kairi, or whatever, which is kind of funny in hindsight, but at the time it was like we legitimately did not have any context to go on.
It actually kind of makes sense totally out of context. I mean, given what happens too, yeah.
I mean, in the trailer, we see these 3 armored figures, and one of them is wielding the Kingdom Key, and the other's wielding Riku's Keyblade. So yeah, it's like, what else am I going to go on? But now we know that was actually setting up a prequel that would come out later for the PSP.
And I think I mentioned this to you guys before recording. I'm not sure if I'm going to play any more Kingdom Hearts games after this one, because as you told me, this is the popular pick for best game in the series, and
definitely.
And it might all be downhill from here. So I don't know if I'm going to play any more because I'm not that invested in the larger lore around Kingdom Hearts. But the one I'm probably most interested in is Birth by Sleep. I mean, I know it's a prequel. I know it's very loved, and I have a convenient version on the PS4 right now. But excuse me. Go ahead. We'll edit that out.
Go ahead, Zach and Nort.
I think that Birth by Sleep, and as a person who honestly has played most of these games and doesn't give a crap about the lore, because I think it's absurd and stupid. I think Birth by Sleep tells like a self-contained, very emotional, very character-driven story in a way that none of the rest of the games do. Like if you just want a good story in Kingdom Hearts, I think the only place you're going to find it, I think 358 has a pretty good story as well. But like Birth by Sleep, I think those 3 characters are all really fascinating. And while it is like super important for the lore, if you want to understand what happens in Kingdom Hearts 3, like you really need to understand Birth by Sleep. But even outside of that, like the storytelling is actually legitimately good in Birth by Sleep. And so I think it's worth playing, even if I think the combat is mid.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit before. I'm sorry, Alex, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Okay, I was just going to say that we talked about this a little bit before stream, but they shuffled off Kingdom Hearts to the Osaka team at Square, and the games they've done have been experimental. They've tried a lot of new combat mechanics in each game, and 3 is kind of a grab bag of all of these mechanics that they added over the course. But the game feel has not been as good, and I think just in terms of like Sora's combat being very floaty, you have a lot of options and they're all very powerful, but as a result the game isn't very difficult. Even things that are supposed to be challenging, though, whereas Kingdom Hearts 2, while it is a very easy game for the most part, especially on the normal difficulty, there are challenges in the game that will test your mastery of the combat. And in general, I think people feel that 2 has, in general, the best game feel of the series, and they've been kind of not reaching that high point ever since.
Yeah, Alex, I know that you've played most of these, if not all of them, and are considering continuing after Kingdom Hearts 2. Do you basically follow like this line of thinking, like maybe Birth by Sleep, but maybe you're also fine?
Yeah, I've played all the ones basically up to the events of Kingdom Hearts 2. And yeah, Birth by Sleep, everything Zach and Peter already said, like rings really truly based on my memories of it. All I'll add to that is that 358 over 2 days is an interesting one, because I think that's would I get my vote as the other kind of interesting self-contained story in the series, where gameplay wise it's very much as a DS game trying to emulate the feel and basic gameplay of Kingdom Hearts 2 on a kind of 64-bit handheld device, which is not the best context in which that's going to work. So there's a lot of kind of flaws there that you'd have to kind of just overcome if you want to experience what is actually a pretty interesting story, where like you're not going by like all 358 days of like Roxas's life as a nobody and member of Organization 13. You kind of skip ahead in parts, but it has this really like interesting rhythm of like you experience a day, you go on a mission. It's all like mission based, as a lot of like, you know, DS and PSP games were structured back then. But you'll go on a mission, you'll get an assignment from the organization, you'll be paired with another member of the organization, so you get like a bit of character development from them. And then at the end of every day, basically Roxas and Axel and Shion, who's this other character who we don't even need to get into because that's a whole other can of worms. It's basically like a mix of Sora and Kyrie's memories in a weird way. But anyways, they kind of like I know
it's a canonical part of the story that nobody remembers Shion.
I love how like the nobody and Heartless and all that nonsense comes together. Shion's kind of important in Kingdom Hearts 3, I think, right? I don't remember.
She's my favorite character in the whole series, honestly.
Yeah, Shion's great. Yeah,
she's delightful, but she's very important in Days, and she does make a return in 3. But yeah, her status in the overall story is kind of a massive spoiler, and it is also part of the plot that nobody remembers her in 2. So that's how you do a retcon, ladies and gentlemen.
is honestly a brilliant way to retcon that feels perfectly in line with Kingdom Hearts' lore.
Yeah, there was a secret 14th member of the organization that everyone forgot about. Is a very Tetsuya Nomura plot point.
But yeah, the heart of that game was really just like seeing like these 3 people who allegedly don't have hearts, don't have feelings, like bond slowly throughout the year that they work together. And like it really just having like seen that sort of kind of endearing and interesting development coming from those characters, like really does put a stronger light on what you see in Kingdom Hearts 2, particularly like in the emotional moments you're supposed to get out of Axel and Roxas, which experiencing Kingdom Hearts 2 in a vacuum, like I feel like it's kind of like clunkily delivered, but having that hindsight adds a lot more to those moments where it's just like, okay, here's this organization that's so obsessed with just creating this Kingdom Hearts and are approaching it very like rationally and intellectually because they think that they don't have hearts. But meanwhile, these characters actually managing to bond together, like they seem to form a heart, like even if they don't technically physically have one, like they reach that regardless. And there's an interesting scene in 2 where it's just like the organization's talking about Axel and how he was weak and all that, but ultimately like that weakness is what led him to like have genuine feelings that they've all been pursuing in the end. So I was able to like appreciate the madness of Kingdom Hearts 2 a lot more having played Days, for sure.
And the thing is, I mean, Kingdom Hearts games talk about hearts so much, like I think sort of the the concept of a heart in Kingdom Hearts is sort of a combination of an idea of the human heart, mind, and soul, like everything from the like everything about the infinite possibility of human thought and emotion sort of is just called a heart in Kingdom Hearts. And Ansem was researching the hell out of them. I think he discovered the way to separate. I think he create the first Heartless and Nobodies, but from his experiments, because he was trying to harness the powers of hearts.
He discovered how to make them and was like repulsed and horrified by what he'd done and tried to shut the whole thing down. And then
Zahanort, his assistant,
was like, yeah, about that.
But like. So they have this this preoccupation with heart, but then Nobodies, beings without hearts, but who also remember the feeling of having a heart, are very powerful in the magic and physical feats they can perform, and do have at least facsimiles of feelings and connections with each other. So I think maybe something that this game posits, or maybe the larger series posits, is that even if you don't have a human heart or soul or whatever, I mean, heart is like the catch-all term for all of this, like you still have these things. So it's I mean, I think I understand the basics of Organization 13's plot, but I also wonder, like they might have been okay on their own, and they might have been okay if they just left Sora well enough alone and didn't interfere, because then wouldn't they be able to build their own Kingdom Hearts anyway? Or did they have to? What I'm saying is, if they left well enough alone, they might have succeeded without interference. But I don't know the machinations of the plot in great enough detail to be sure about that. But we're talking about like all this Kingdom Hearts stuff without actually talking about Kingdom Hearts 2. So Peter, you can get one more comment, but then we actually have to talk about the game on the cover of the episode.
I understand. We've gone on a long tangent. I was just going to say what you're talking about is actually addressed in Dream Drop Distance.
Oh, good. Okay.
They do explain it. They do explain it. And yeah, it's basically just Xemnas lied to them is the explanation.
What you're talking about is actually addressed in the side manga and light novel.
No, you see, you have to. No, you're not wrong.
And you have to play the 2 mobile games that both discontinued 8 years ago.
And are only in Japanese.
One of them is exclusive to Japanese flip phones that don't exist anymore because they stopped making them. And yeah, no, like the trying to keep track of this series as a newcomer is hard enough nowadays, but back in the day when it was like fragmented on so many platforms, it was not easy.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned this in the previous episode, but if you were a Kingdom Hearts fan trying to play the games as they came out, you had to own something like 7 systems.
Yeah,
I mean, we're starting with PS2, GBA, DS, PSP, and mobile phones just in the first 6 or 7 years of this series. And then Kingdom Hearts 3, I think, like didn't it start out as a PS3 game that had to move to PS4? It's
something like that.
It's all so messy, but this game is very loved and does at least try to justify itself with a fairly intricate story, and people have gotten very attached to it. But Kingdom Hearts 2 is usually held up as the pinnacle, which gets me back to what I was trying to say 15 minutes ago. I might stop playing the Kingdom Hearts games after this one, because this was good. I just don't know if I'm attached enough to play more. But let's talk about what we did enjoy about these. After that, the events of sort of the midpoint at Hollow Bastion, you have to revisit most of the Disney worlds from the first half of the game and sort of continue their stories / like add a conclusion to their stories. And some of them are kind of represented in their movies, like in Mulan, you basically just do a couple of fights protecting the emperor, and we get some Pat Morita lines. So so they're almost like the 2 halves of the Mulan movie. But in Halloween Town, both the part 1 and part 2 events have take place after the events of the movie Nightmare Before Christmas, and even add a new character to this sort of I'll say an artificial intelligence experiment without a heart in that one. And in Aladdin, like the Kingdom Hearts 1 Aladdin is basically the first Aladdin movie, and Kingdom Hearts 2 Aladdin is basically the first and second halves of Return of Jafar, but replacing the Jason Alexander character with a nondescript merchant. But so like each one of these approaches the Disney lore differently, but they at least give you a good enough excuse to revisit all of them, because I think Chip and Dale tell you that like if you can close the doors or revisit the doors in all the worlds you went to before, we can see a path to Organization 13's base. And so that's sort of what gets you rolling there. And if you want to approach them in difficulty order, like every stage in this game does have a difficulty level estimate helpfully there for you.
Yep, and you can technically visit them in whatever order you like. Generally speaking, it's best to just play in the recommended level order. There's a couple you can technically skip if you don't want to, like they're not on the critical path. I think Pride Lands is actually technically the second visit might be optional. I'm not 100% sure.
I believe that's correct, yeah.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
But yeah, they're all neat little snapshots in their own way. I think it's a little more fun when they're like playing with the Disney plots instead of just rehashing the movies. Like I kind of liked the second half visits because they felt like they were like little continuations. Like, oh, Simba's dealing with like anxiety about his position and living in the shadow of his father. The Pirates one is just kind of this little non sequitur about the chest going missing again.
The Halloween Town was my favorite one. I think that the three best Disney worlds in this game are Timeless River, Space Paranoids, and Halloween Town. But
definitely.
like Halloween Town sort of puts forth the idea, like, what if there was this experiment character basically is a creature without a heart, but in doing so it behaves like a heartless and is trying to act on its newfound sentience and obtain a heart. It's like, oh, weird. So you can almost create an artificial nobody if if you're irresponsible with technology in a specific way. But for some reason it was just as twisted and simultaneously wholesome as that movie is, which delighted me.
The Nightmare Before Christmas stuff in all these games is just great. It's peak.
And I use the pumpkin keyblade that you get in Halloween Town Part 2 for basically the entire game.
I think it's maybe the best one. Like Ultimate Weapon, which is a grind, obviously, is good, but like in terms of damage, I think it's Decisive Pumpkin actually of all keyblades in the game.
I didn't grind for endgame stuff, so I ended up using Decisive Pumpkin and a couple of the a shield and wand that were dropped by nobody enemies. For
Those are
Donald
great
and Goofy
weapons. If
I got I think they were rare drops, but I ended up getting one of each.
Yeah,
but and they carried me through the whole game. Do any of you guys have? But I was playing almost entirely physical, and for Valor mode, I kept the Hercules World Keyblade as my second one because it gives you a bunch of bonuses to air combos. And the Decisive Pumpkin has very high attack power and increases your damage the longer your combo goes, and or I think it empowers finishers or something. It's very, very good. But that setup basically carried me through the whole game. And whenever I tried a new one, like if I unlocked I unlocked like Squall's and Oron's Keyblades, and I got one from
Squall's is really good in specific circumstances.
Yeah, like I tried a bunch of them, and I tried the one that gives you Final Form, but every time I was like, I kind of miss my pumpkin, so I just kept going back to that by the end.
The whole existence of 2 Become 1 is just to unlock Final Form easier, because its power is actually just that it increases your chances of going anti-form. And then when you do that enough times, you eventually just unlock Final Form automatically.
That's after Roxas.
Yeah,
after the Roxas box fight. That was an addition in Final Mix.
Indeed, yeah.
I got Final Form once. It was at a random battle just in the world that never was, and not an actual boss fight. And every other time I tried to use it, I would just get anti-form again. It's like, all right, well, whatever, back to pumpkin time. But and towards the end of the game, I would just use Valor Form or Limit Form, depending on the situation, whether I wanted to keep Goofy around, basically. And again, this combat, I don't think it's at the level of a good character action game. This game came out around the same time as God of War 1 and Devil May Cry 3, and I think both of those games have significantly better combat than this, but they're also just a different kind of game than this. But this is at least functional action RPG combat for the PS2 era that lets you do some fun things, which is, that's probably me throwing more shade than most people would at this combat, but it's I thought it was fine, and my main gripe is that you don't get a reliable dodge roll unless you grind Limit Form to level 3, which is annoying. They should just give you one.
That wasn't even in the vanilla version either. Limit Form was added in Final Mix, so the original version did not have a dodge roll. It was just quick
the guard parry exists, but it's not very good. And you whiff hard if you whiff hard if your timing is off, and you usually get punished for it. The only reason I could beat Marluxia at all, who's one of the optional fights here, is because basically the parry worked for me unexpectedly 3 or 4 times.
The block timing is a little specific, but it can be very good.
I think that not to push back on what you're saying too much, Sollosi, but I in normal story mode, like, I agree with you. Like, I think that the combat is fine. It's easy. It's whatever. But I think that even on normal mode, once you start, and the criticism could be like, look, like, if your combat doesn't get good until you do the hardest fights in the game, then what good is it anyway? But I also understand, like, because like obviously this game is meant to work for kids, but like once you start doing the data fights or Sephiroth or I think Marluxia on Critical, which I've done, like you have to really engage with a lot of the abilities this game is giving you. And while I'm not in any way saying that it's on the level of like a Dark Souls or whatever in terms of character action, I do think that there is a lot of depth to be had here, and there's a lot of depth to be found here. That I don't think on normal mode, unless you're doing the data fights in particular, you're ever going to experience. Because it's funny because like I remember when I first finished my normal run and I did like everything. I did Lingering Will, I did all the data fights. I was like, I'm going to go back and do a critical run because like now I understand how this combat works. And then like I kind of had to use it there, like on critical, like in particular. And again, I think you can criticize it. Like I think that you have to engage in what the game is doing, but like I think that if you're not using reflect on normal, like you're not really seeing what the game can be. But yeah, I think that there's like a lot of depth that is here that is never plumbed because they were trying to hit the lowest common denominator on a normal run.
Yeah, like
which
even
is
the
kind of
the
what Final Mix.
Yeah, like even the
Go ahead,
first
Alex.
half of Critical, like it wasn't totally like I didn't totally understand like how this combat was supposed to be like of such high quality as like some people say it is. But once I started doing those absent silhouette fights and was like you were saying, Zach, really forced to like think about, all right, what are my tools? How am I going to use them? How do I make sure I don't get punished and things like that? It really does become so much more engaging. You really have to like think through your encounters and use your kit as like smartly as you can while really like studying your opponent and like having like those successive like optional boss fights in a row and like just tackling them all kind of one after the other just was so fun and taught me how to be so much better at the game in a way that I really didn't see at all in my normal playthrough or even for like the first half of the critical run. And yeah, like the game's not perfectly balanced. I agree that guard feels weird, even though it is like kind of an essential tool. It doesn't feel great. So like not everything is like worked out completely and totally polished and completely balanced. But when the game is hitting the right difficulty, like it gets so sweaty and it gets so fun. And like once you get like to start powdering long combos into like successive finishers, it's just like this is some good stuff.
A lot of Final Mix kind of exists to counter specific criticisms about Vanilla Kingdom Hearts 2. So some we've already addressed, like, okay, they didn't have a dodge roll in Vanilla Kingdom Hearts 2. They added that with Limit Form. The lack of challenging endgame content. There was only Sephiroth in Vanilla KH2. And yeah, he's tough, but he's easier than his Kingdom Hearts 1 form is. And so a lot of that stuff sort of was like, okay, we're going to add some end game stuff. We're also going to tighten up the combat a little bit, add some new abilities. There's some things on the higher difficulties and in the harder boss fights you just don't have to consider with some of your abilities. Stuff that you would equip like Dodge Slash, for example. You might equip that on a normal playthrough and not notice what the big deal is. Like, oh, it's just doing a little extra damage. What's the problem? And then when you consider, oh, wait a minute, this attack has a really slow range and it can actually whiff your whole combo, which opens up enemies to counterattack you, which can be a game ender in some of these boss fights. Or Retaliating Slash, which sounds like a straight upgrade to aerial recovery at first glance. It's aerial recovery, but it does damage. Isn't that great? Yeah, but it also negates second chance and once more, and again opens you up for counterattacks. So there's things like that you just suddenly have to consider that you wouldn't have to normally. And that to me is when the combat starts to reveal a little bit more depth. Although again, I do agree with you, Sollosi, it does not nearly approach the depths of something like Devil May Cry 3 or anything like that.
Right. Like, we're not talking even like Bayonetta or certainly not Sekiro.
I know we aren't, but people do, and I find that absurd. Yeah. And anyway, but you were absolutely right that it's the optional fights in KH2 Final Mix that really force you to engage with the with the finer nuances of combat. Like I've mentioned the Marluxia fight a couple times. That was the hardest fight in the game that I actually took part in, because again, I didn't do any data fights. I didn't even dream about doing some optional stuff like Lingering Will. I only did Cave of Remembrance for about 45 minutes. But because, like, I mean, they basically don't care about your HP bar in that fight. You sort of get a countdown that's lowered with every hit. So even if you're able to heal back your lost HP, it doesn't heal back your countdown unless you land a counter hit that adds a couple ticks to your countdown to help you a little bit. So you have to reliably parry or dodge their attacks to avoid getting killed by the doom counter. And if I'm not mistaken, this is one of the main antagonists of Chain of Memories.
Yeah, he's the main antagonist.
Yeah, he's the main antagonist, and he fights with a scythe and dark or death magic. But like because of that, I couldn't face tank and heal back damage like I could for certain other bosses, because he had these instant kill mechanics and this countdown mechanic. So again, I had to level up a little bit to after my first failed attempt, and then get some very clever parries and dodges in a row to get some combos going on him, and it felt great. But also after that, I was kind of like, you know what, I'm just gonna play the rest of the game now, because there's too many frustrations about this combat that make me I'm not interested in pursuing a platinum for this game while I'm literally planning out how I'm gonna platinum Metaphora Fantasio later this year. But But yeah, no, there is depth to the combat that you only really take advantage of fully in optional fights and or higher difficulties. But I know what my stamina is for Kingdom Hearts combat, and it is gone. I think I am ready to shelve Kingdom Hearts 2 for a little while. But I'm sorry if I keep hammering back to that point. But I mean, it's good. I enjoyed the second half Disney stuff. If anything, like I mentioned how the sentience of the experiment in Halloween Town made me think of the possibilities of AI. Like even an even more rosy outlook on AI is what happens to Tron in the space paranoid stage, where like basically a sentient program, who is inclined to assist users, sort of like discovers friendship and human connections in retaking the mainframe or whatever we call the world of space paranoid / Tron, and it ends up being kind of wholesome. Like the whole like at the very end, when Tron greets you from the computer terminal after you escape, I'm like, oh, good for Tron. Oh, he's doing fine. Tron's a good boy. And it's
that world is so good.
Yeah, no, it's a great world. Again, I think there's a clear top 3 in Kingdom Hearts 2, but it just also made me just realize that 2005 was a different time in talking about synthetic sentience. But was there anything else in the part 2s of the Disney worlds that we particularly found remarkable or enjoyable? I mean, the Zaldin fight in Beast, I know is
I was going to talk about that actually, right, because even in my normal run, like I remember struggling on that fight, but like it teaches you have to guard, right? Like it's like you have to guard and then learn and guard and then learn,
or at least panic cast reflect occasionally.
Exactly, yeah. Reflect is the MVP of this game, especially on our higher difficulties. Oh, yeah.
That's how I beat Zaldin, and also teleporting Gunboy at the end. It was
Zigbar.
Zigbar.
Zigbar,
a couple panic reflects at opportune times.
Oh, that fight's made for reflect.
It is, yeah, and I think that it's a good fight. I think it's interesting. Like I got my. I can't say any of the words I was about to say. I lost that fight a lot, but like I enjoyed sort of learning it, because I was like, oh yeah, like I have to actually occasionally dodge things and like occasionally like hit back in like a very particular way and like guard in a very particular way. So I thought the Zaldin fight was cool, and yeah, I actually really like that world that never was, but we'll get to that as well.
Yeah, that world is really awesome. We've talked about the Tron world a little bit. It is probably my favorite world in the game in hindsight, just because I like how it's integrated into the story. I really like this again. I like how it handles Tron's character, kind of working in. It's the same thing they do in the Nightmare Before Christmas world, where they take a concept that fits the setting of the movie it's based on, but also works with the themes of Kingdom Hearts' story. And also, I think the guy who's voicing Sark in the MCP is doing a really good David Warner impression. So that world was really fun.
Yeah, I really loved part 2 of Pride Rock. I just like someone else was talking about like how like the way it like built off the events of the Lion King to like show like the hesitations of like Simba following in the footsteps of his father and needing to find his own style was just like genuinely compelling way to follow up the events of Lion King, but like also just like that Shadow of the Colossus style boss fight at the end, that was so cool because like we were talking about last episode, that giant kind of field area that's just kind of like empty large space in this map, but like
they find something to occupy that space.
Yeah, occupy the entire space for sure. And you have like these kind of like fun little
boss arena
reaction commands where you're like dodging like its footsteps and then you like jump on top and you do damage there. It really took me back to like Shadow of the Colossus in terms of like just like the setting, even just being like this desolate space and like climbing this giant thing. I enjoyed the heck out of that fight.
I do enjoy the spectacle of that fight, but I mean it did sort of boil down to confusingly run around until I saw the reaction command, then mash it for about 5 seconds, then try to get a combo on the bongo drum guy on the top. But it was an impressive spectacle, and I would say one of the more memorable boss fights in sort of the Act 2s. But I mean, I think I maybe preferred part 1 of Pride Lands just because we got the really unsettling lion version of Pete in that one. I was not expecting that, and the first time I saw him playing this game, I think I did the proverbial spit out my drink.
But it also had the scar fight, which I never want to do again.
Oh yeah, the scar. I didn't care for the scar fight.
No, that fight's just kind of annoying. Yeah,
I'm trying to think about the other worlds here. Aladdin did an interesting thing in Agrippa Part 2. A lot of it is sort of introduces this flying carpet gameplay that you have to engage with. And sometimes it was fine, but then it was kind of like it's like I don't think this verticality is working how they want it to work, and
it moves a little too quickly for my liking.
Yeah, the genie fight at the end sort of wasn't great, but I hacked my way through it, I guess.
I handed the controller to my wife, and I'm like, "You do this,"
that was honestly...
like, I was not doing this part.
That's what I did with my girlfriend in Dondoko Island earlier this year.
I
think
also
the
did
Genie
that.
Jafar fight was the worst in the game. I would say I thought it was just absolutely terrible, and I did not enjoy the verticality. It's like too much trauma from Little Mermaid stage in Kingdom Hearts 1.
Like the reality is like you have to hit the stomach and then like it stuns it. Like I didn't realize the gimmick of it for a while. But yeah, I think it's not great.
Yeah. I do like the Grim Reaper fight in the Pirates World second visit. That's a good Heartless fight.
It's excellent.
That one screwed me up a couple of times because I kept not every time, but several times when I tried to turn in the coins to make him available for hitting again, I would accidentally enter like the duo mode with Goofy or Donald with Goofy or Jack.
Which always turn auto limit off.
I didn't, and I couldn't turn off auto limit in the fight. So yeah, that's what it's called, a limit. I hit my limit break when I tried to turn in coins multiple times, and that was really frustrating. But I think I did turn off auto limit after that fight.
Yeah, that sucks, man. That is definitely something that if you can have those abilities on, if you have multiple auto commands at once, that can kind of screw you in fights because they'll just trigger it in opportune moments.
Yeah, I mean, I like the auto limits with like Goofy's second auto limit, the one that where you just where you spin around in a dervish for a little bit is I thought that one was pretty satisfying, and I like the sort of dancing Sora and Jack one where you just shoot a bunch of things with fireballs. But
they're great for trash mobs.
Yeah,
'cause
but for
you're
boss fights,
invulnerable.
yeah, but for boss fights, the temporary invulnerability wasn't bad, but sometimes it interfered with the mechanics of the boss fight.
Yeah, definitely.
But I wish I had known that going in, that I had to deal with a boss mechanic like that, and where I would have turned it off. So it was just that basically that fight went from probably good to pretty annoying just because of the settings I had in place. But I got through it again. I was playing on normal, so I did die occasionally, but I was always able to regroup and retry and take care of it. But after you clear out all of these Disney Act 2s, you unlock the final dungeon of the game, The World That Never Was, which is sort of an elaborate sort of castle town and then castle, punctuated by, in the final mix version at least, I want to say 6 boss fights against Organization 13 members. Maybe one fewer, because you get sort of at the very beginning of it, you team up with Axel to fight a whole bunch of nobodies, and then you get a fight against a mysterious robed figure that's clearly Roxas.
That fight rules.
That fight is my favorite fight in the game, because
Yes.
you have to.
That fight is amazing.
There's you sort of have to respect his space because he's throwing a lot of stuff at you at once. He moves quickly, but gives you windows of opportunity to hit and get a combo at him, so he doesn't feel like he doesn't feel untouchable. The music is absolutely killer in that whole fight.
Oh my god,
it's awesome. Yeah. And it even seemed to like I don't know, it hit some kind of second motif or crescendo, like when the fight got dire in the second half, which might have been just a freak accident, but it felt awesome in the moment. It took me a couple tries, but that fight was great, and I didn't even mind replaying the beginning half of that stage to get back to it.
Yeah, it's annoying that you don't have a save spot closer to it.
But I think that's probably because it was added. It was added for final mix version. That fight just rules.
That scene was originally just a cutscene in vanilla, and they added what is probably, I think, like that's the best boss fight in the game. Full stop. It's challenging but fair. The music is my favorite piece that Shimomura's ever composed. It's called The Other Promise, and it's simply beautiful.
I think it might be still second to Guile's theme from Street Fighter 2. Just personally speaking.
Maybe to the battle theme from Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga.
Maybe for Kingdom Hearts 4 they should put in the Street Fighter stage. I'm just saying.
You know, I would be okay with that.
That'll get me playing.
There's an idea.
I think what's great about that fight too is like even on normal mode, like it teaches you that like you have to like adjust your abilities, right? Like because like if your combo's too long, Roxas will wreck you. So like finisher plus is bad against Roxas, and like combo plus is bad. Like it teaches you to like sort of navigate that. And honestly, like on this last run, the only reason I got him was because he didn't go to the center and start firing stuff all around the stage, because I had no idea how to block that at all. It killed me every time. Once more saved me a couple times, then I was dead immediately because he was on me. But like, of all the fights on normal mode, and I know that we've kind of trashed the the combat here, like I think that fight, especially on harder difficulties, like teaches you like that you have to be cautious about the way that you approach a fight. And it's just like emotional, like even if you don't have the 358 context, it's still really moving because you spent those first 3 hours as Roxas and his friends. Mm-hmm. And I think that I just think that it's an excellent fight all the way around. The cutscene at the end is excellent. The fight itself is excellent. You can't just you can't do just one strategy for it. You have to bob and weave and move.
Yeah, you can't brute force it at all. Yeah, that's for sure.
And it also has some of the most satisfying like reaction commands out of like any boss
taking his keyblade.
Yeah,
right.
Where it like doesn't like impede too much on like the actual combat, where like some fights in this game just go a little too ham on the reaction commands, but this one just felt like such a sweet balance of like the spectacle of reaction commands and like the real challenge of like a well-designed fight.
The and also putting it in story context, we know now that the beginning of the game was a data-based simulation of a captured Roxas like sort of reuniting with Sora to make to either empower Sora or make him whole again at the expense of Roxas now living within Sora instead of being a separate being. But and the ending of the Roxas part of the story at the beginning was him sort of ascending this grand staircase and defeating some kind of void and void creature, and you realize now that was sort of him like going like re-entering Sora and becoming part of Sora's heart again. And again, I might be getting some terms off here, but then this fight takes place on that same stage where Roxas's fight was at the end of the prologue. So it's very clear that this is taking place within Sora, and he's either fighting back Roxas or like taking on Roxas's challenge to sort of become at it, to sort of like gain inner peace and the mental toughness to move forward. Again, you can put in whatever metaphysical and metaphor you want here, but it's like if you have any attachment to Roxas at all, this is probably an absolute heartbreaker because it feels like the last gasp of Roxas's attempt at personhood. And even if you don't care about Roxas, like this is a physical manifestation of Sora's inner turmoil. That's just a dope boss fight front to back.
Absolutely. Yeah, couldn't say it better.
Yeah, and the other connection it kind of like draws on is that towards like the end of 358 Days, one of the last things that happened in the game is that Roxas and Riku actually face off in like that same area in the world that never was.
They referenced that a couple of times in cutscenes in Final Mix, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that was like
those are some of the ones I had to have explained to me.
Right. But yeah, that was like one of the moments that Roxas, before he got kind of his memory like wiped by Diz, like that was him like at his most like aggressive, at his most powerful, like genuinely like trying to like fight for his personhood against Riku. And here like we see him fighting against Sora in a way that's like more like positive and embracing of what his fate and his role is. So it's just really effective kind of callbacks between those two games.
And that scene with him and Axel at the end talking about it, that was also added to Final Mix, and that's another really good scene. It's well acted. They're both doing a really good job. They talk about their feelings in a really honest and open way that fits the themes of the series. It's just
I think they're also enjoying sea salt ice cream in that conversation. Maybe
certainly are enjoying some sea salt ice cream.
Boy,
they love that sea salt ice cream.
I'm more of a Dog Street guy myself. That was my takeaway from the prologue.
That's a reference to the bouncer.
Yeah, that great Dog Street hoodie. That's my takeaway from the Kingdom Hearts 2 prologue.
Of all the games to drop.
And I think this is sort of only hinted at. Like Mickey mentions a couple times that Ansem the Wise liked ice cream, and Ansem the Wise mentions that in the prologue. Well, I mean, we still think of him as Diz at this point. That he couldn't program everything he wanted to into the simulation because it was just too challenging. So I think he put sea salt ice cream into Roxas's simulation because he just likes ice cream and it was an easy flavor to program, is my way of interpreting that.
I'll accept your headcanon. That's pretty funny.
But because I mean, me watching this and just seeing those damn like turquoise ice cream bars come up multiple times, I was thinking to myself, what the hell is with this game and sea salt ice cream? So I had to make some kind of like mental explanation for it, which is pretty mental in all. But yeah, that's a great fight, and it's sort of the first of several kicking off in the world that never was. Several of these fights have gimmicks. If anything, the Roxas fight has fewer gimmicks than the others. We mentioned Zigbar. He's one of the early ones. He fights with revolvers and teleportation magic, and he is just really annoying to nail down because he teleports all over the place, and eventually gets an invincibility phase where he just fires a Gatling gun of projectiles at you that you either have to reflect or dodge or die trying. That one took me a couple tries. I can't remember all of these, and I'm probably getting them in the wrong order. When you finally fight Syx, I believe he fights with a large two-hander sword. He does a bunch of big hits on you, but he'll eventually leave copies of his sword sort of like stuck in the ground that you have to pull out, ride like a surfboard, and then hit with him to have him exit his invincibility state so you can combo him again. I forget his name, but there's the damn playing cards one.
Luxord, yeah.
Luxord, yeah. I don't like that fight.
No,
I love Luxord.
That one's all gimmick and less satisfying.
I love Luxord as a character, and he actually, his 3 version is actually a better version of that gimmick because he does come back. Spoiler alert. Yeah, no, the version that fight in 2 is just kind of annoying. It's really hard to get the right commands to beat his games, so you end up just kind of rolling around in dice form or card form trying to stay away from him, and then you can wail on him a little bit. It's just not fun. I don't think so.
I just sort of rolled around until they let me transform again. And I don't think I fully understood the gimmick by the end. Or I mean, I think I killed him on my first attempt, so I didn't have to do any hard research. And also, I played this game over a week ago, so I maybe don't remember it 100% faithfully. But
I like how Syx is basically, if you've been paying attention to the Berserker mobs up to this point, they do the same thing where they leave their weapon behind and you can take it and beat them up. So I like how that kind of teaches you what to do in that situation.
I think every member of Organization 13 has their sort of nobody enemy counterpart.
Yes, they do.
So they almost feel like an evolved or an ultimate version of those nobodies. Like I'm pretty sure that the Dragoon ones are our boy Zaldan from Beast Castle Part 2.
Yep, and same deal there. They have the learn reaction command where you can take their spear and then like jump onto them, which is what you do in the Zaldan fight.
Or which is one of the more blatant Final Fantasy tricks you do in these games.
Oh, he's very much they're called Dragoons Dragoon nobodies, for God's sake.
But yeah, throughout these fights, you are getting cutscenes with Diz, and you see a reunion between Kairi and Riku. Riku, who you've been sort of chasing this entire second half of the game. And if anything, Sora seems more interested in reuniting with Riku than with Kairi.
Yeah, for real. Bromance over romance for Sora, for sure.
And the shippers love it.
Oh, I bet they do. What is it? Is Brojos before Shojos? Am I right? But then the big reveal of Riku removing his hood is a somewhat darker complexion version of Xemnas / Ansem, or it looks like the heartless version of Ansem from the end of Kingdom Hearts 1. And I believe the explanation for it is that Riku has been inside the world of darkness, fighting against Heartless, trying to find a way to revive Sora in the years in between Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. But in order to survive that world, which he, sometimes he was accompanied by Mickey, other times he was fighting solo. In order to survive there, he had to take on another appearance or he would completely lose himself. So he ended up turning into Heartless Ansem, ?
Yeah, because the Ansem Heartless, he was possessed by Heartless Ansem in the first game, and he's still struggling with that in Chain of Memories.
Right. Okay. But only allowed a partial takeover, so he looks like Ansem, but did not give his entire mind and self.
So
to
that was okay. He took on that form because it was like a reflection of his heart or whatever the hell. But yeah, that's why he looks like that, and you, like you said, he had to use that form to survive in the Dark Realm and also to beat Roxas in their clash, because Roxas was kind of whooping on him before he embraced the dark power.
This is not really part of Kingdom Hearts 2, but I mean, when you experience that event in 358 over 2 days, are you controlling Riku or controlling Roxas?
Roxas.
Yeah.
Right, okay, because I thought that was the Roxas game, but Riku wins that fight. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, that all ends up happening in a cutscene where Riku actually triumphs.
Yeah, they play the same cutscene that they do after the Roxas fight in this game, just with a few additions. Yeah,
you see a flashback version of the unabridged flashback of that fight. But I mean, continuing here, you get a rather nice reunion between them. Diz makes a possibly a last stand where he expresses again, he's unmasked at this point. It's clearly Ansem the Wise. He's talking to Mickey. He has a lot of regrets about setting all of these events in motion. He seems like he was acting really selfishly, and a lot of people suffered as a result, but he seems to have some regrets. So he uses a machine he's been developing to disrupt the Nobody's Kingdom Hearts or artificial Kingdom Hearts experiment. I think, again, my grasp of this lore is shaky at best. But does he give his life for it, or does he make it out of there? I frankly don't remember.
He comes back in the later games.
Okay, so he accomplished his goal and got out of there at least, or at least it seems that way.
At this point in the story, it's sort of implied to be a last stand. So
that's what I thought, but I also couldn't remember the exact circumstances of the last stand. Hence my question.
Nobody's allowed to die in this series. You kind of just got to roll with it after a while.
Yeah, kind of like how in what is it, in DC Comics, nobody ever dies except for Thomas and Martha Wayne.
Yeah, Christopher Lee is absolutely owning it during his little monologue in this one. Again, I mean, he was a terrific actor, and he definitely understood the homework assignment with this one. So I really like his performance, and as Ansem the Wise in this scene, his apology to Roxas, his impassioned little speech, his lamenting conversation with Xemnas when Xemnas shows up to mock him, like, "Oh, look at what you've become," all that stuff. It's good stuff, and it made me enjoy him a lot as a character, probably just because of that performance.
Right on. And but as you move forward, maybe the next surprise visit you get is from Pete and Maleficent, who have mostly been your adversaries this whole time. Like, Pete is kind of the recurring villain that sets Heartless on your path multiple times in sort of the first 2/3 of the game. But it looks like for this, like a sort of the enemy of my enemy is my friend situation goes on. Like, even though Maleficent and Pete want to take over all the Disney worlds, they're willing to abandon that goal for a little while to take down Organization 13, who are, frankly, too much in the way for them. So they hold off a wave of nobodies to let you sort of continue on to the castle. That's maybe halfway through. You still have a couple bosses to go after you meet Maleficent and Pete. But towards the end of all of this, in a moment that I'm sure fans have been buzzing about on internet forums for the last 18 years, you finally get the Sora and Riku reunion. Riku sort of through the power of Kairi and Sora's friendship or something, reverts back to his real form, and he joins you as a fully fledged party member, which allows for some really, really dope team limits.
Oh yeah, they're very strong.
Yeah, as I've been grinding in the late game, I'm like, why would I do it anywhere except for the world that never was? Because Riku was broken.
Riku is by far the most powerful teammate you get over the course of this game. As much as I like to think that's like, I'll say things like, Jack's elemental moves are kind of better than Donald's, or like I like the invincibility on Goofy's limit break. It's like, no, like Riku just annihilates all of the other ones. Don't even bother with putting anyone else on his level on a tier list.
I also like that he got a Keyblade in between games. Like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and instead of having it's I don't know, it's like the Green Ranger giving up the dark sword of power towards the end of season 1 of MMPR. Am I right? Just me? Okay.
It's not just you, I promise.
It's a good little character moment, because despite Riku still having a lot of self-doubt over his turn to the darkness in the first game, he's still a good guy, and the Keyblade is still willing to go along with him. I like that.
But anyway, I mean, this eventually leads to a final confrontation against Xemnas, where there's some, oh boy, how do I put this? Mash triangle for reaction, heavy sort of obstacle courses. Then you fight some flying space dragons. Then there's some shooting sequences, but eventually you are fighting a super castle version of Xemnas, and then a more humanoid version. Well, first you fight a humanoid Xemnas, then you get into the space dragon stuff, then fight an immobile Xemnas that's controlling all of the nonsense around him, and then get a proper Riku and Sora versus humanoid Xemnas final battle that is a little cutscene heavy, but very, very fast moving and dramatic. It's a contender for best fight in the game, the final part of the Xemnas fights. And ultimately, I mean, I thought that it wasn't as challenging as some of the optional fights, but it was pretty dope for a finale. But mostly, it was a lot of fun just doing all of these reaction events and limit breaks with Riku.
Yeah, they really lean into the spectacle for the final fight, as they should, I think. Like, Kingdom Hearts 2 was clearly taking notes when God of War came out, and like just like, how are we gonna make like this as cinematic as possible with kind of just like minimal yet satisfying gameplay? And I think they owned it in that last fight of just like cutting up buildings, flying through the air, having like this another little like gummy ship kind of rail shooter segment, and then having like a legit boss fight at the very end. I think it's just really well paced. That whole final dungeon is amazingly paced and beautifully composed and everything. And I think like my favorite reaction command overall is the very, very end of that Xemnas fight, where you literally have to like adjust your thumbs on the controller to just be on X and triangle as you're like doing commands as both Sora and Riku, just mashing them in alternation. That was just like, they really knew how to just like kind of wield the expressivity of the controller into like this emotional dramatic finale. It was really great.
I mean, I think that the best what's the word I'm looking for? The best quick time event style cutscenes are still Asura's Wrath for the PS3, where they'll
absolutely.
They'll fill the entire screen with the button icons to make you mash it more and more dramatically. But this has a similar level of spectacle and cinema to it, to make quick time events, which are kind of an eye roll thing in video games sometimes, to make them really fun. And to me, it's like I mean, I've played so many Yakuza and Like a Dragon games in the last 4 years or so. This felt like, in a good way, this felt like the better parts of a Yakuza 5 boss battle.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the Xemnas fight. That's probably my second favorite boss fight in the game, if only for the spectacle and for the music. Darkness of the Unknown is the title of that track. Beautiful
This
song.
is my wife's favorite final boss fight in all of video games, and she's played a lot, and I think it's because of the music. So I agree.
That's another moment where, just like the other Promise, Shimomura is really good at working character motifs into her songs, and this is another song that gets more significant as you add in more games, because it incorporates elements that are also in Terra's theme in Birth by Sleep, and the connection between these characters, and it's so good. It's really fun stuff. I also like, right before the Xemnas fight, we also get a cute little capstone on the Roxas and Naminé story, where they both kind of like finally reunite with their original selves. Naminé was the blonde nobody from the start of the game, and she is, as was probably pretty easy to figure out, Kairi's nobody.
I got there eventually, but
she basically, when Sora turned the Keyblade on himself in Kingdom Hearts 1, he created Roxas and Naminé simultaneously.
And Xion, just throwing that out
and
there.
Xion, but
yeah, no, I've seen the name Xion thrown around a little bit. I think mostly in like lead up to Kingdom Hearts 3 stuff from like, oh god, what was that, 7 years ago now? Maybe I'm off.
2019.
Okay, so more like 5 years ago. But
it feels like 20 years ago.
Xion's not in this game, right? That's just a name that
No.
I've heard.
Yeah. She's a character from Days who is like the 14th member of the organization, and she looks like a black-haired Kairi.
Sure, okay.
She's like I said earlier, she's my favorite character in the series. I like her a lot, but she doesn't really have any bearing on this story. She is important in Roxas's life.
All right, so there's a bunch of different Soras and Kairis, kind of like Goku's in Dragon Ball FighterZ. I get it.
Yep. She's the Kairi Black of the series, if you will.
The Kairi Black or the SSJ4 Kairi. Okay.
So Roxas is Super Saiyan God 3 Sora.
Oh boy. And then or does that make Namine like Kid Goku or something? You know what?
No, but it
It's
means
been
that Ventus is definitely Super Saiyan God Blue.
okay. All right.
Peter's
Now
got this all figured out.
this feels like we're hitting the end of the episode, and not just because we were talking about the final boss already, but I mean I've talked about this over and over in this episode. I really did enjoy this game in spite of my reluctance in starting to play it. I tried to go in with an open mind. It wasn't always fun, but the highs are very present, and I was compelled to keep playing it. This is a good PS2 RPG. Does it make me want to re-record the best PS2 RPGs episode and give this one a couple extra points? Probably not. But this is but I now I am able to appreciate this at a fairly neutral level instead of just you know sigh and look the other way when I hear people really celebrating this game hard online, because this is again there's a lot of nonsense here, but I had a lot of fun with this, and I can tell that it's that all three of you guys, I mean, you're playing it on higher difficulty modes and talking about possibly platinuming the game. This game is very loved, and I respect its heart. But
I'm really happy to hear you say that, man, because I'm glad you had fun.
I did. Again, it was I kind of had to be dragged along sometimes, but I did have fun. Kind of like a a small boy going on a family vacation he doesn't want to go on, but in the end, begrudgingly admitting that he liked hanging out with his cousins or something.
You got some ice cream at the end of the trip.
Oh, yeah, I wonder what flavor of ice cream it is.
I bet. Yeah. Like I think that like the whole game, like I actually think you've captured it really well. Like it's the whole series really is about like heart above anything else. Like it's about like feeling these connections between these people, and it's not always going to make sense. And like I'm okay with that. And like there can be like the lore hardcores like Peter is.
I wouldn't even
like,
go that far, because I fell off around the time that you had to start paying attention to the mobile game.
That's fair. But like I also feel like there's a relationship between these characters, like the core characters, that like it sort of follows through from each game, and it's still worth following, and there's still something there to experience. But like it's all nonsense at the end, so I mostly agree with your takes.
It's so much nonsense, but I was a little moved at the end when they finally shared some pow pow fruit together. And yes, I remember that, even though it's been 5.5 years since playing Kingdom Hearts 1. So like having these callbacks and these characters that are very loved makes me even like makes the long distance in between Kingdom Hearts 2 and 3 even more hilarious in retrospect, because this fan must have been just absolutely frothing by the time that game finally came out, which leads me to Kingdom Hearts 4 was confirmed to be in development around 2 years ago, so we know it's being worked on. I'm sure that Square has a lot of other games that they'd love to distract us with before they have to talk about Kingdom Hearts 4 again. But before we sign off for good, whether it's a story thing or a Disney World or a callback you would love to happen, what's just one Kingdom Hearts 2 thing you would like to see recreated or revisited in Kingdom Hearts 4?
The combat. The combat is never even close in later games. Flow motion is like fun, but like stupid. But like to actually have something that is as tight as this one, and I know you have your issues with the Sollosi, but it's still like way better than some of the, to put it generously, kind of nonsense they introduced in the later titles.
Just make the whiff on a missed guard less punishing and give you a reliable dodge roll earlier. That's all I want.
I totally understand. But it's still way more interesting in general than it is later. I hope that they remember that combat can be tight and fun, and not like the data fights in Kingdom Hearts 3, which are so hard because the combat's bad.
Yeah, I think for me it would be combat as well as the number one. But just to say something different, I think like they've advertised Kingdom Hearts 4 as kind of like a soft reset for the series, and I haven't even played Dream Drop Distance and 3. But I think that sounds good based on the way everything just keeps accumulating, and you need to like address more and more lore if you just kind of at least partially wipe the slate clean. And I hope it just focuses more on what really is like the heart of this series, which are those close character relationships, because like we didn't even talk about like the ending scenes too much between Sora and Riku, but there's some interesting stuff going on there between like what the darkness means for Riku as kind of like being him becoming like more independent and leaving behind like childhood innocence. He finds a bit of that again at the end of Kingdom Hearts 2, but this more dynamic between like light and darkness being balanced, and like these more interesting personal reflections on like maturity and memories that are the best cutscenes in the Kingdom Hearts series. I hope that we can just get back to that rather than convoluted lore that keeps building. I hope they end up doing that.
I'm with both of you on the combat, because as much as I like the other games for being they're still fast paced and flashy and fun. The combat lacks real weight and is not nearly as responsive or snappy as 2's. There's a lot more opportunities for enemies to interrupt your combos and punish you, which if the data fights and lingering will in Kingdom Hearts 2 make you feel like you have to master the combat and realize its hidden depths, then 3's combat does the opposite, where it's like, oh, all of a sudden all of the flaws in this combat system get revealed because now you're being punished for playing it. I want to see them wrap up their existing story beats in a way that is satisfying and also doesn't add a million new mysteries to us to consider. I don't think that's going to happen, but it'd be nice to see. If nothing else, I'd also like to see them... I'd like to see them like maybe bring back some more interactivity between the Disney worlds and the main plot, like make them feel a little less segmented. That might be harder than I'm saying, because from the sound of it, one of the reasons that Kingdom Hearts 3 took so long to come out was because it was harder to negotiate with Disney over those licenses.
No.
So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I'm still curious as to what they're going to do with it.
I'd also like them to maintain some Final Fantasy into Kingdom Hearts 4. Like, they played around with it in Kingdom Hearts 3, but like, there's really no Final Fantasy in Kingdom Hearts 3. And I'd like more of that in 4. I don't think it's going to happen because Disney owns the license at this point, but it's extremely Disney at this point, which I don't have a problem with, but like, I love like sort of the weird, doesn't make any sense, nonsense interplay of Final Fantasy and Disney that they had in the early games, like this one.
Yeah, it's fun. It was fun seeing all those characters interact. And while I know Nomura's logic with 3 was that, well, we have a lot of spiky-haired anime characters running around, and that sort of fills our Final Fantasy quota, it's not the same as like, it's still fun seeing your kind of parodies or recreations of characters from the Final Fantasy games running around too. Like, I would love to see Noctis or Lightning or someone like that show up in Kingdom Hearts 4.
We got to get Sid in there. Sid from 16.
Sid from 16 needs to hang out with Sid from 7, like, now.
That's what we need.
What I want is Disney to confront their own dark past in Kingdom Hearts 4 in an absolutely impossible 0% chance negotiation. Bring back Timeless River and add a Song of the South world. So
man,
so they
that
can,
was dark, dude.
Yeah, hey, this game is about darkness and light and hearts. And Disney needs to confront their dark past and unleash the one movie that will never leave the Disney vault in Kingdom Hearts 4.
I like that you just said the one thing that will never happen.
I'm setting the bar at impossible so that I won't be upset in any outcome.
I think we're more likely to get an Oswald the Lucky Rabbit cameo than we are Song of the South.
When they brought back Oswald the Lucky Rabbit for Epic Mickey, that was exactly the kind of Disney deep lore I was hoping to get out of a Kingdom Hearts game. And again, like, Timeless River is that stupid fucking notification again. Timeless River is like the best world in this game, and things that explore the Disney history and not just the self-created lore of Kingdom Hearts is more interesting to me. But maybe they won't give us a zippity doo-dah musical number. Like, I think that probably not going to happen. But what's also probably not going to happen are any more episodes of Kingdom Hearts on Retro Encounter in the near future. Because while I enjoyed my time with Kingdom Hearts 2, and we did a spoiler cast on Kingdom Hearts 3 a couple of years ago, and 2 episodes on Kingdom Hearts 1 a couple of years ago, I'm about tapped out for now. But if I do decide to play Birth by Sleep, or another game in the oeuvre, you three will be among the first to know. And thank you so much for joining me on this episode. And thank you, listeners, for joining us on this episode. I had a lovely time, surprisingly. So I think that closes the book on Kingdom Hearts 2 for now. Sorry if there was an unusual pause here. We were experiencing some technical difficulties. But I am ready to talk about the future of Retro Encounter, even if it doesn't include Kingdom Hearts. Next week, we're doing a Halloween-themed episode of Retro Encounter about several scary or spooky moments in RPGs, but not specifically horror games. So we're going to have share some ghost stories for the Midnight Society next week on Retro Encounter. And that episode's already been recorded and was a lot of fun to do. But coming November, we are going to, do something we haven't done in 6 years, and that's have a full month dedicated to The Legend of Zelda. There's a lot of Zelda excitement right now because Echoes of Wisdom came out not too long ago. So we're going to, in the month of November, we're going to do one episode on The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, a spoiler cast, one Legend of Zelda Fantasy Draft episode, and then 2 episodes on one of the most influential Zelda games, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. So please look forward to that month chock full of Zelda starting in about 2 weeks. But listeners, if you want to reach out to us about Halloween or Zelda or Kingdom Hearts or forbidden Disney lore, you can always email retro@rpgfan.com. Also follow RPGFan on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, or Discord, or visit rpgfan.com to see news articles, reviews, podcasts, and new content happening every day. Another great way to interact with RPG Fan is to listen to our other 2 podcasts. There's Random Encounter every 2 weeks about randomness and what games we're playing, and Rhythm Encounter every other 2 weeks about RPG music. You can review or rate Random, Rhythm, or Retro Encounters on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, whatever feedback you wish to provide. But also another great way to interact with RPG Fan is to visit rpgfan.com/shop, where you can find 2 storefronts, one hosted by TeePublic, where you can get RPG Fan themed apparel and accessories, and a second one hosted by Hyperplay RPG, where you can get the RPG Fan Reviews Collection, a 300-page tome of single-page RPG Fan reviews from over the years, all 4 of which are probably represented within. All 4 of us panelists are probably represented within there. But if you want to reach out to us as individuals and not as a podcast or as a website, let's tell the listeners how to do that, starting with you, Aleks.
You can email me at alexfraniczek@gmail.com.
Now, Zach.
You can email me, zachw@rpgfan.com. I'm also on our Discord as ZachW.
Now, Peter.
I don't really have an email for anyone to reach out to me at, but you can always find me on Blue Sky at I Have Fury.
And listeners, it's easiest to find me on Blue Sky or Discord or Instagram. All 3 places I am at Evoker for Dogs. So I guess we are ready to close the door and lock the key on this one, at least until I get Kingdom Hearts curious again and start texting Peter. It's like, hey, well, what new worlds are in Kingdom Hearts 3? Is it worth revisiting?
Toy Story?
Okay, I'm on board. Oh, it looks like you get
it's
pirate
a great world.
You get pirate outfits in Pirates of the Caribbean
and
now?
the Pirates of the Caribbean world is actually good.
Oh, man.
It's the peak. It's one of the best parts of 3. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Sure.
We need to stop this conversation now before before I do something I'm going to regret. Listeners, thank you. No, they are not. The only seeds I'm planting are in my Land Runner in Metaphor Refantasio. Thank you. Good night and good luck. Get out of here.